When it comes to racism, the South gets a bad rap. To be fair, there was slavery and legal segregation until the 1960s, so they do need to own up to their past. But does that mean that the North is exempt? There was actually slavery in the North, although not to the scale and duration as below the Mason-Dickson line. But that doesn't mean that the North, which prides itself on being a liberal utopia, is exempt from the wrath of this list. In this video, we'll look at towns in the North that have made headlines for racism and anti-Semitism. We'll look at different racial groups and how they've fared in the North. Number 10 is Newark, New Jersey. Newark first gained notoriety as a racist city back in 1967 during the 1967 Newark race riots. The riots took place over a 4-day period from July 12th to July 17th and resulted in 26 deaths and hundreds more with serious injuries. Though tensions were simmering for a long time before, the powder keg exploded when African Americans reached a numerical majority, despite most people in power and governmental officials being mostly Italian, Irish, and Jewish. More recently, one of its public high schools was exposed for decades of racism. African American students petitioned the superintendent with claims of microaggressions, racial slurs, mistreatment by teachers, and more. Uncovered emails dating back over a year revealed a problem that was a lot more systemic than originally thought. The city is also ranked as highly segregated. During the COVID pandemic, Newark was often cited as an example of a city experiencing twin pandemics, meaning their black and white residents saw far greater disparities in both access to medical care and medical treatment. Number 9 is Chicago, Illinois. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've heard about all the problems this city has faced. From gun violence to poverty to homelessness to the current migrant crisis, Chicago has seen it all. What earned Chicago a spot on this list is the less obvious. Many black residents in Chicago have claimed that their mayor and other leaders have been ignoring black residents for decades. But it came to a boiling point when housing, food, and medical care were being extended to the migrants. Many black Chicagoans once called out whites in Texas for being racist and xenophobic for its reaction to the migrants. But now that Texas brought the southern border up north to Chicago, the tables have turned. Fighting has erupted in the streets between migrants and residents, as black residents have to fight for benefits that they're entitled to from their own taxes. While it isn't only black residents that have taken issue with the migrants, it is the black residents of Chicago who have been taken for granted by leader after leader. Number 8 is Flint, Michigan. Flint will forever be linked with the water crisis, and for good reason. It was a prime example of how racism can seep so deep into politics that it can be taken for granted. Many people just assume that there was some bad water, but residents of Flint know better. Over 56% of the population is black. The crisis began when city officials switched Flint's water source from Detroit, which had treated water, to water from the Flint River, which, needless to say, was not treated. The Flint River had been knowingly problematic. Even its wildlife was hurting due to low oxygen levels and containing untreated waste and toxic chemicals. So, imagine city officials deciding it would be a good idea for human consumption. City officials made the switch despite the dangers, justifying it as a cost-saving move and one that would be better for the future of Flint. They were very, very wrong. Flint is a predominantly black community with high rates of crime and poverty, and the city lacks community resources, services, and funding. Though the people of Flint did not want their water source to be changed, officials persisted in an attempt to cut costs. Many argued that if this were a wealthy, white neighborhood, they never would have knowingly given the residents toxic water. Number 7 is Buffalo, New York. Buffalo's racism came to a head in the 1980s, when a string of lynchings and burning crosses were peppered throughout the black part of the city. Many residents in Buffalo today say that racism is so deeply ingrained in the city that it has become the norm. Buffalo, one of the most segregated cities in the United States, let alone the North, was in the news in May of 2022 when an 18-year-old white supremacist drove over 200 miles with the intention of killing black people. Knowing that there's a high concentration of black people on the east side, it wasn't hard for him to delineate where to go to open fire. The segregation can also be seen by how each side of the city is maintained by public officials. Many would argue, or anybody who drives through with their eyes open, can see that the east side is particularly neglected with vacant lots and crumbling infrastructure. Additionally, Route 33, the Kensington Expressway, cuts right through a black neighborhood, which not only devalues property, but adds noise pollution to the neighborhood. Despite being in one of the most progressive states in the country, Buffalo has some work to do. And to be fair, it is doing something. The local ACLU is helping residents fight environmental racism, largely caused by the highway. They drafted a letter that residents can copy and paste to send to their local legislators. Way to go! Number 6 is New York City, New York. For this one, they're getting the award for being the most anti-Semitic city. And yes, they also have the highest percentage of Jewish people living in the city, so odds are they would see more instances. But even per capita, New York takes the cake. And things have gotten significantly worse since October 7, 2023, when Hamas launched rockets into Israel. For starters, the nation's anti-Semitism has become clear, as many people cannot even distinguish the difference between a Jewish person and a Zionist. Jews are not a monolith. Assuming that all Jews are oppressors who support Israel's every decision is in fact anti-Semitic. But whether or not you agree with Israel, there is no excuse for anti-Semitism. Without even taking into account October 7th, New York City saw 170 anti-Semitic attacks in 2021, but then saw a staggering 260 in 2022. Jewish people comprise about 13% of New York City's population, which makes it the largest Jewish community in the world outside of Israel. Jewish people only make up 2.4% of the US population, but this still shows a huge disparity in terms of hate crimes. Number 5 is Cleveland, Ohio. A 2023 study confirms what many Clevelanders have long suspected, that their neighborhoods were redlined because of anti-black prejudice. Redlining is a huge marker of racism. Redlining is defined as a discriminatory practice in which services are withheld from potential customers, historically black people, who reside in neighborhoods that are classified as hazardous to investment. This means that banks can refuse loans to certain people, thus creating segregation in the city. Companies have actually made color-coded maps that literally color-coded the city. Flash forward to today, where research shows that people who lived in Cleveland neighborhoods with even one black resident were 14 times more likely to be redlined than in neighborhoods with no black people at all. Cleveland's legacy can still be seen today, as people living in historically redlined neighborhoods deal with higher rates of lead poisoning, less green space, and are more likely to suffer from asthma and diabetes. Cleveland is trying, though. As recently as January 25, 2024, Cleveland's Racism as a Public Health Crisis Coalition held the first in a series of community meetings to discuss strategies that the group has identified to address systemic racism. Number 4 is Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Many people may not immediately think of Milwaukee, let alone Wisconsin, when it comes to racism, but it ranks high in several metrics. Like Cleveland, groups in Milwaukee have been lobbying for racism to be named a public health crisis. Wisconsin has the highest black imprisonment rate in the country, with Milwaukee having the highest crime rate in the state. 1 in 36 black adults are in prison, as opposed to 1 in 81 nationally. Black men in particular are sentenced longer and harder for the same crimes committed in Milwaukee than crimes committed by white residents. Those disproportionately harsh sentences don't just stop at black Milwaukeeans. Latin men and women are also charged with longer and harsher sentences than their white counterparts. Latin residents also make up a disproportionately large portion of the prison population. Wisconsin drew attention in 2021 for passing a bill that bans the teaching of critical race theory. Regardless of what critical race theory actually is or is perceived to be, the bill prevents the teaching of racial concepts like systemic racism. This impacts Milwaukee the most, as nearly 40% of its population is black, the highest in the state. Number 3 is Anchorage, Alaska. You can't get much more north than Alaska, although that isn't typically what comes to mind when thinking of the Civil War. But Anchorage has a much different legacy with racism, and that's largely towards its native Alaskans. Anchorage has a missing and murdered Indigenous peoples crisis that is a statewide issue, but is often highlighted in Anchorage, which is Alaska's biggest city. For decades, Alaska Native communities have had to endure high rates of assault, abduction, and murder of their tribal members. Community advocates link the cause of this crisis to the legacy of generations of government policies of forced removal, land seizures, and violence inflicted on Native peoples. Anchorage police have often been accused of exhausting fewer resources to find missing, assaulted, and murdered Indigenous people than they do with victims of crimes that are not Native Alaskans. The short-lived show Alaska Daily with Hilary Swank highlighted this injustice and disparity of resources. The incarceration rate for Native Alaskans far exceeds their representative population, and school children have also reported feeling marginalized despite being on their native land. Alaska has worked hard to combat this, and many Native Alaskans have formed their own advocacy groups and own systems of law enforcement that exclude so-called Western justice and serve their own people with cultural sensitivity. Number 2 is Washington, D.C., aka the Swamp. A recent study conducted by a personal finance website ranked Washington, D.C. dead last in the United States in terms of racial equality in the economy. D.C. is a minority-majority area where Black residents make up 44.7% of the population and whites make up only 40.5%. The rest of the city is comprised of Asian, Native American, mixed race, and other racial groups. You would think D.C. would be a place of relative racial harmony, but as we know, this is not the case. According to studies, Washington, D.C. has the highest median income gap, the highest labor force participation rate gap, the highest unemployment rate gap, and the highest homeless rate gap, but did register the lowest gap in rates of home ownership. D.C. is the center of American politics and the nation's capital, and yet even our own leaders struggle to come up with bipartisan legislation to solve the problem. In fact, many politicians in D.C. disagree on if there even is a problem, or to what extent the problem exists. If our top leaders can't sort it out, then it sets the tone for the nation. And number 1 is Boston, Massachusetts. Boston's colonial history is unique, even in the Northeast. It was ground zero for the American Revolution, the call for independence from an oppressive monarchy, and slavery was abolished in 1783, the same year that America won its independence. Despite it being a northern city, there was segregation in Boston dating back to the 1940s, although legislation prohibited it. In 2020, Boston was listed in the top 11 segregated cities in America. The city was also called out for its income disparities. Even its tourist industry was slammed for ignoring neighborhoods of color and directing visitors to the whiter parts of town. And the criticisms don't stop there. Harvard has been in the news for all the wrong reasons recently, particularly when its then president refused to condemn anti-Semitism on campus. The university has also drawn criticism in its admission practices by requiring higher test standards for Asian and white students. Anonymous Asian American plaintiffs sued Harvard in the landmark case Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard. Despite being in the North, the city still has work to do. Boston is trying, though. In 2020, then-Mayor Marty Walsh declared racism a public health crisis. So we'll see how it does in the years to come.